they sent a real producer and a real engineer. So they came down and told me, after they looked at it, we can't possibly make a record here by yourself. Bring the masters to LA, we'll mix it in LA. And I'm standing here and I was going to say, that's great, but I hesitated just when I didn't make it into Polaroid on time, most days actually.
In the world of rock music, where larger-than-life personas and big-budget studios often dominate the narrative, one quiet engineer changed everything, right from his basement. The debut album of the band Boston not only shattered records, but also shattered preconceived notions about how rock music could be made. This isn't just the story of a successful record. It's the story of how one man, Tom Scholz, fooled the entire music industry by building a sound so massive, no one could believe it came from a tiny home studio. Let's break down how this sonic revolution happened, one brilliant move at a time.
And then I got interested in playing guitar when I heard, I think probably Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin and Jeff Beck were my biggest inspiration to pick up a guitar and try to learn how to play some of that stuff, which wasn't very easy, I found out.
Tom Scholz wasn't your typical rock frontman. An MIT graduate and a Polaroid engineer by day, he spent his nights in a small, cluttered basement studio where he transformed into a musical mastermind. Far removed from the glamour of rock stardom, Scholz was a perfectionist and a problem solver who used his technical know-how to build an entirely new kind of recording process. He didn't care for the spotlight. His real passion was in crafting soundscapes that could rival those of stadium concerts. Scholz wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing perfection. And in doing so, he laid the foundation for one of the most iconic debuts in rock history.
The only song that wasn't recorded in that studio is the very last song of the first of the Boston's first album, which is "Let Me Take You Home Tonight," which Brad wrote. So that particular song was actually recorded in the LA studio with all the members that you see on the album. So, and I remember, at least for me, when I was young, I always remember hearing that song and I'm going like, something, it doesn't sound, it sounded sonically different than the rest of the album, and you could actually hear it. If you place that particular song against the rest of the album, there's it's just a slight disconnect. There's a little bit more, it's a little bit of a brighter sound as opposed to some of the other tracks, as opposed to the rest of the tracks on the Boston album.
While most musicians of the 1970s relied on major studios, Scholz charted his own path. In his basement, surrounded by wires, handmade amplifiers, and self-built recording equipment, he developed a revolutionary sound. He didn't just use gear, he invented it. He built amplifiers, EQ units, and various effects boxes from scratch, all to serve a very specific sonic vision. These devices weren't available in stores. They were the result of Scholz's engineering genius and musical intuition. In a time when home recording was seen as lo-fi and amateur, he pushed technical boundaries to craft tracks that sounded like they were made on million-dollar consoles.
And I would just keep experimenting with the equipment until I managed to stumble onto the sounds. When I didn't make it into Polaroid on time, most days actually.
Scholz had one dream: to create music that made you feel like you were in the front row of a massive arena, even if you were just listening at home. Most artists working from home embraced minimalism, but not Scholz. He layered guitar harmonies, engineered intricate solos, and obsessed over every second of tape. He wasn't just making songs, he was creating an immersive experience. Every chord and crescendo was part of a grander plan to engulf listeners in sound. This relentless drive for a full, live concert vibe was what ultimately set Boston apart. His ambition redefined what a home studio could achieve.
You make the record here by yourself, bring the masters to LA, we'll mix it in LA. And I'm standing here and I was gonna say, that's great, but I hesitated just 1 second. He says, and we'll split the producer's royalty 50-50. I said, thank God I waited a couple extra seconds.
By day, Scholz worked a stable engineering job at Polaroid, but his heart was always in his basement studio. He frequently showed up late to work or snuck out early, prioritizing his music. His co-workers likely saw him as a bit eccentric, a gearhead obsessed with his strange night project. What they didn't realize was that he was laying the groundwork for one of the biggest rock albums of all time. The paycheck from Polaroid funded his studio setup, but the real reward was in those solitary nights, tweaking sounds and chasing the perfect tone. His basement became his escape, and when Scholz finally compiled his demo recordings and sent them to record labels, he faced the daunting challenge of standing out in a crowded market. But when CBS Records heard the tapes, they were floored. The sound was massive, layered, powerful, and full of energy. They were convinced it was the work of an entire band recorded in a high-end studio. The truth? It was almost entirely Scholz alone in his basement. The revelation shocked industry insiders. They couldn't wrap their heads around how a single man, outside the studio system, had pulled off such a monumental feat. That disbelief became part of the Boston legend. Initially, CBS Records demanded the album be re-recorded in a professional studio with a full band. To them, Scholz's unorthodox methods felt too risky. They wanted predictability, polish, and control. But Scholz was steadfast. He refused to compromise on his sound. He knew what he had created couldn't be replicated in a traditional studio. After back-and-forth negotiations, CBS finally caved and allowed him to complete the album his way. This rare industry concession showed just how undeniable his talent was. It was a turning point, not just for Scholz, but for artists everywhere who dreamed of full creative control.
I put a wall, a little simple wall from here to here, right where...
While Scholz had the instruments and arrangements covered, he needed a vocalist who could match his ambitious sound. He found that voice in Brad Delp. Delp's dynamic, high-register vocals were the perfect complement to Scholz's guitar-driven soundscapes. The collaboration was electric. Delp brought warmth and humanity to the intricate instrumentation, turning great tracks into unforgettable anthems. His voice added emotional depth to Scholz's precision, and together, they created a chemistry that would define Boston's identity. Delp wasn't just a hired voice. He was the missing puzzle piece that brought Scholz's vision fully to life.
I managed to get my start, and it was humble beginnings.
Interestingly, only one track on Boston's debut album wasn't recorded in Scholz's basement. Let Me Take You Home Tonight, written by Brad Delp. It was recorded in a conventional studio with the full band, and the difference is noticeable. The song has a brighter, glossier tone that contrasts with the dense, immersive quality of the other tracks. Fans with a keen ear often point out this sonic distinction. While still a strong song, it subtly highlights just how unique and powerful Scholz's homemade recordings were. His basement tracks didn't just compete, they outshone professional studio work.
That's when I put it there.
You put it there?
Yeah, I can tell.
Really?
I can tell
Oh
because
my
it's got masking tape.
Released in 1976, Boston's debut album was an instant smash. With tracks like More Than a Feeling and Foreplay Long Time, it didn't just sell millions, it created a whole new genre. Scholz's approach to layering, harmonizing, and creating live-sounding tracks from a home setup helped define the era of stadium rock. His work inspired countless artists to reimagine what was possible outside traditional studios. Boston's debut remains one of the best-selling debut albums in history. It wasn't just a musical achievement, it was a technological and cultural milestone that flipped the recording industry on its head.
They sent a real producer and a real engineer. So they came down and told me, after they looked at it, we can't possibly make an actual real record here. This isn't, you're not serious about this. I said, yeah, I'm serious.
Despite the massive success, Scholz never became a conventional rock star. He shunned fame, distrusted the music industry, and continued to fight for artistic integrity. Each subsequent Boston album came with more battles against labels and producers who wanted control. Scholz never let go of his roots, the basement, the gear, the obsessive pursuit of perfect sound. Today, Boston's debut still resonates, its influence echoing in every home studio, every DIY recording. Scholz proved that greatness doesn't require $1 million studio. Just vision, persistence, and a refusal to follow the rules. His legacy is more than just music. It's a blueprint for creative freedom. The story of Boston's debut album isn't just a tale of musical success. It's a masterclass in defiance, innovation, and self-belief. Tom Scholz showed the world that with enough determination and a refusal to compromise, you can change the game from your own basement. What started as a personal experiment turned into a cultural explosion, rewriting the rules of the music industry and inspiring generations of artists to come. In every guitar riff and vocal harmony, you can still hear the heartbeat of a man who believed in his vision more than anyone else did. And in that belief, he made history.